LA Pressure, LA Services, there's lots of different names going around. That was one of our lessons about, actually as a small business, you're good at marketing and branding. And so that was one of our lessons learned, that we didn't do that very well. And so we're still working on how to fix that. One of many things we've learned along the way. So my talk is a little bit about just an academic partnership with Western Sydney and what that kind of happened, what happened to that and how it kind of extended out to a much bigger thinking. But this is where we got started, in this very building. About 3 years ago, I think, was when we first started to talk to Don. So what is it about? So this is kind of what we were doing. These sorts of things, sort of big, heavy bits of static equipment. And so we had to kind of think about, well, what was that in a future state? Was a really challenging thing. And I guess if you're in a startup, you kind of got a fresh business and a new business, and you're not shackled to all these things that are going on in the past. Where this is a business that's been going for 37 years and doing the same thing for a long, long time. How do you kind of shift that thinking? And so it was a different sort of problem. And so, 2008, it was some of the sensor and data acquisition research we did with the tech voucher with Western Sydney. So that vessel's still up in the lab up here. And we're looking at what is the next stage, and we've been working through that. So as I said, trying to understand that future state on a business that's very caught up in its past. So some of the questions I guess I asked, myself particularly, was, how does the industrial hype apply to us? Very hard to see when you're kind of looking at very dull industrial equipment. Can it really add value? If so, where in the business and how? How have we got digital skills? We don't have the skills. Why add sensing at all, really? That came across our mind. How could it really add value? And I didn't just see how it was going to relate to us. Initially, it was very hard to see that. A journey that's taken a long time, and I guess that's why it's 3 years, and we're still kind of feeling like we're just starting to take, bigger steps than what we were. So I guess one of the things that I certainly got out of talking to academics, and I've had a different route because ISSN didn't exist when we started, was I started the road trip around and meet lots of academics, which took some time, but it was certainly interesting. They certainly pushed my thinking outward without a sales pitch, so it wasn't like in the consulting space. It was more, they were genuinely interested in finding things that could help us, and so that was a difference that I saw between consultants and academics. And academics had a really deep knowledge of things and would say things to you that would just like kind of shift your thinking. You think, wow, So for us, one of those aha moments was probably early on when Don Wright said to us, look upstream and downstream of your product. So our product is the one in the middle. So basically he was forcing us to go, well, look at the material side of what you're doing. Where could you add value on that side? And then look at what does your customer actually do with your product? I'm pretty sure that owning that bit of equipment isn't really their end game. It's just the process to get there. So that changed our thinking a bit about, what are we actually selling? And I guess, as was mentioned earlier by you, Michael, we started to think, do you actually need to sell these things sometimes, or could you actually lease them? At that point in time, we hadn't kind of got our heads around fully how that might work, but today, as I stand there, we're much clearer on how that could work in terms of shifting our business out to different areas we never imagined. And then we could tap into that with a different business model, completely different model. So how did that touch point impact us? I guess I just wanted to touch on a couple of lessons, not so much around the technology. And I deliberately put in there a word cloud in German because it's kind of like that. It's so confusing. There's so much going on. If you don't know the language, you've got no idea. So that was, I guess, for me I'm a very visual person, so visually that was how I felt. I didn't get it. So the photos there of the team at Western Sydney, so that was actually an intern we pulled out of Macquarie Uni, and we stuck him up here to do his internship. This was the way it worked. He rang up on the right day and lived just around the corner, so it kind of worked. And that's been really good for us to have some of that cross-pollination as well. So the lessons that I guess I want to mention are that getting clarity across the landscape was one really important one. A definition and the context for Industry 4 was really important to us, getting that right. Having business models that actually work for the technology, so thinking about that rather than getting swept up in the emotion of the technology, which is really easy to do and how we started. And the workforce needs around that, because as we're starting to see, it's a massive shift in what we're experiencing or what we're going to need in the future. So I thought I'll just run through those 4 things very quickly. So for us, clarity across the landscape was, there's Industry 4, there's the business model, the canvas, and how you apply value and feasibility, those things. And then what is the workspace? What is the social experiences and skills and the expectations of the future workforce? How are we going to attract the best talent if we're a dirty and dangerous looking organisation that only makes really old products? we're probably not going to get the best people in the house to come and help us do that, and we're going to need really skilled people. So they were the three things that we had to get clarity across to actually work our way forward. The next one was that definition of Industry 4, so finding a context for it that actually suited us. So for us, this came out of McKinsey. It was around big data, the advanced analytics, human-to-machine interface, and the digital to physical transfer was the four things that really stood out for us in terms of that Industry 4 bubble that we could actually hang on to and go, okay, this is how it relates to us and starting to make sense. So that was the next sort of big lesson for us. Business model canvas was the next one. As I guess, I started to move away from, my background of being a trade, then vet training and then engineering. It was always about technically the solution. So those sorts of things, and I hadn't really had any training in thinking about it from a business point of view. So the last 3 years for me has been very much about retraining my brain to think it from a business aspect and how do you leverage that, how do you create business environments, how do you get partners, how do you get fundraising, how do you do all these different things. So that's been a real lesson for me. And the business itself has always been about the product and the technical solutions. So even for the business itself, it's been learning, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with succession? How do we deal with all these things to actually get the revenue and to get the business structure in place and get the funding behind it to make these things happen technically that we want to happen. So one of the best things I saw was at a business model designer. She is now managing director of Us2. She talked about having feasibility, desirability and viability over the business model canvas and the different places. So that was a really moment for us to understand the context for the business model canvas in terms of putting technology and putting this in place and putting viability in place. So for us, this was a way we actually felt we could actually move forward and get hold of it. So I'm starting to aggressively approach that now that I've got some comfort around the context of what the business model canvas meant, because it was very vague to start with. I didn't really get it. So the last part of it was around those skills and the future skills in the social context. So I guess we started to work with different universities, and not anything formal, just I guess a willingness from academics to be really involved in something that's, I guess, new and exciting. And so we're also set up with Liverpool Boys High, so we have an internship program going with them, and we've actually got these students working in innovation spaces that we're doing. And that's actually led us to understanding better about how education's working and putting us in those conversations, and also understanding what is next generation thinking. And that led us to thinking more about, okay, our existing employees, how do we actually shift them? What sort of work environments do we need to create that deep learning that needs to go on? And a shift in mindset that I'm just coming in for a job, but I'm actually part of moving something forward bigger. So that was still very much a work in progress, but I think that's the area that actually took off better than the other areas, because I think there was a huge appetite for it in the education sector. And so we found a partner very easy and started to move forward very quickly, and other people have come in and helped us to do that. So that's it for me. So yeah, fairly simple journey so far, but learned a lot about business and putting it all together. So, that's it.
Thanks, David. Thank you.